Well, good morning. Happy Saturday and happy July to all of you. This is the Pondering radio program, Pondering podcast, and it is great to have you aboard. Welcome to all of you. And I guess I'll welcome myself back. Welcome back, Joel. Thank you very much. Thank you. We were away for a week, took a little breather here on the podcast, put a note out there, which hopefully all of you saw. As we were, exploring Canada, not really exploring too much of Canada, but enjoying parts of Canada at least. We were in southern Ontario, and we're having a little glitch here this morning with our wireless access. Let me figure out why that is. Hold on one moment. Do not adjust your sets. Okay, that shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, we might have to relocate here. Unfortunately, sometimes with the podcast, we end up with, we're going to try this again. Let's see if we can bring it back. Well, anyway, we're moving forward. So, what was I going to say? So, we were in southern Ontario, camping near Lake Ontario, actually. In a place called Bay Meadow, which was just beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And we were there for a week, had a good time. We're with my in-laws, and from their perspective, they were with the outlaws. No, just kidding. We were with my wife's parents, also our daughter and son-in-law, and the two granddaughters, and Karen and I, camping for a week. It was just beautiful weather. We had lots of fun, did a little fishing, did a lot of swimming, did some canoeing, and mostly just relaxing, so that was what really needed. So appreciate your patience, but we are back in the saddle again here on the Pondering Podcast. What is Pondering, you ask? Well, good question. Pondering is a show where we ponder all things, and then we talk about them. And there are no holds barred. We talk about everything, you name it. We talk about politics, we talk about religion, we talk about all kinds of stuff here on the Pondering Show. And so that is, it's good fun for us. Every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I am going to have to pause here for a moment and reboot because we are having some technical difficulties. Do not adjust your sets. This is only a test. I think we're back. We are live. Had a little technical snafu. Sorry about that, everybody. But Pondering shall ride again. It is riding again. We're here. Welcome back to the Pondering Podcast and radio program. I am your host, Joel Rissinger, and of course, what do we do in the show? We ponder all things. We think things through, and then we talk about them, and there are no holds barred in this program. Politics, religion, sex, money, kids, you name it, we talk about it. And we do so from an unabashedly, unashamedly, unapologetically Christian perspective, because I are a Christian, and so are many of you. And in fact, I'm a pastor, to make it worse. Rush Limbaugh used to say, the most dangerous man in America. And I would say, well, no, actually you're not, because a pastor is even more dangerous, because, we are, we actually believe the Bible. We're those crazy, redneck, Bible-thumping wackos that would actually think that we can talk to God, listen to God, obey God, serve God, and follow what's in His Word, and use it as a rubric, a lens or paradigm, a perspective through which we view the world and by which we live out our life and our calling. And in this program, we talk about all kinds of stuff. And here's the thing I've noticed, even Christians have this idea that perhaps we shouldn't talk about things, certain things, or if we do, it's separate from our religious connection or religious life. It's, what's the word? We can talk about church stuff on Sunday and use Christianese to do so, but we can't talk about those things Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Or we could talk about business or politics on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but we can't do so on Sunday. And if we do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday even, we are supposed to do it without bringing, quote-unquote, religion into it. I love that phrase. Don't bring religion into it. Well, if we understand what faith really is, I don't like the word religion either necessarily, but we'll talk about that generically as sort of synonymous with our faith. If we understand faith correctly, it should guide, influence, speak to, yea, even direct everything we are and everything we do. And we cannot, in fact, separate that. I love it when presidential candidates try to pretend that they can separate their faith from their leadership approach, their philosophy, their decision-making, everything else. Remember when Mitt Romney was running for president, and people were concerned about his Mormon faith, and he was trying to, in essence, distance himself from that, while saying, yes, it's the faith of my fathers, etc., but don't worry, it won't impact me. Well, I'm sorry, Mitt, Governor Romney, Senator Romney now, I don't think that's possible. If, in fact, it's real, if you really believe something, it is the essence of your identity, and therefore it must influence, guide, even direct all your decisions and thoughts. So on this program, we do admit that. We talk about that. We are unashamedly proud of that. But we listen to other views too. We welcome people to share, to talk, to communicate with us, and it is a thrill to do that every Saturday morning from 8 to 9 a.m. So we're still having some live feed connection issues, so we're going to continue. We will record this program and we will post it later so that people can listen to it on demand and perhaps view parts of it if we ever get the video feedback here and the live Wi-Fi connection back. I don't know what's happening. We're having some modem issues here at the Rissinger Ranchero, and that may be the problem. I believe at 8:30, Tom Hansen is going to join us, do some news review. We'll see how that works out. Hopefully we won't have any issues with that. And we're just going to roll. We're just going to rock and roll with the program. So some exciting news. I talked about our vacation. It was great. Thank you guys for your patience. And again, that was great fun. Oh, well, that has ended. Getting bumped, and I'm going to try to go back live again. Let's try it one more time. But yeah, no, that was good, and I appreciate your prayers and your patience and with us being away. We should be able to continue doing the program throughout the rest of the summer. We are going to be doing some additional trips and some camping, but I have mastered, I think, the remote Wi-Fi hotspot option on my phone. So we should be able to generate a hotspot and therefore do the program from whatever campsite, wherever we happen to be. We do plan to do some traveling and very excited about all of that. But anyway, a lot of great stuff happening here in our ministry and in the work we're doing, and even in terms of this program. Something to throw out there, have you consider, pray about, think about. We are toying with the possibility, and it is remote at this point, but it is a possibility, of going back on live radio locally at a very powerful station that would impact thousands of people potentially. So pray for that and pray for wisdom, guidance, direction, and we will continue if we do that, Lord willing and station permitting. We'll continue to record and podcast that program so that people can listen to it on demand at iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spreaker, and any number of other venues. But I like the idea of live broadcast as well, not just through Facebook with video, but audio, so people driving around, cruising here and there can hear it and respond to it. I think that's always been an attractive thing for me, and I've enjoyed it as we've had that opportunity in other networks. So we'll see what comes with that. I will keep you posted, but certainly you can be praying about that and give us any input. By the way, if you want to participate in the program 24/7, 365, you can go onto the Pondering Radio page on Facebook. You can log in and make your comments, post them right there on the page. It's open season for people to post. You can also call us and leave voicemail messages at 860-500-7163, 860-500-7163. We do listen to those and pay attention to your comments, and we appreciate those. And if we can, I know we're having a little phone issue even today. Wow, this is a technology day. But yes, we do check those. You can also email us at ponderingradio@gmail.com, ponderingradio@gmail.com, and we will gladly respond, if appropriate, to your comments, thoughts, ideas, suggestions, input, output, throughput, etc. So, kind of winging it today because we thought we would be live and thought we would have Tom, and we may not be able to do either because we're having such a... Wow, that is really weird. Even our phone system is down. So, we're going to record this here. There we go. Those of you that are joining us on Facebook here and then looking at the video, sorry about the glitches. We're having some technical problems with our Wi-Fi service and our phone service today. So this is just fun. But we're working on it, and we will post this for your viewing and or listening pleasure later on. So a couple other things happening that I think are exciting. For those of you here in Central Connecticut, know that next week, I believe it's next week, the third Saturday in July, so I think that's next Saturday, we will be all day at the Newington Extravaganza. Now, if you've never been to the Extravaganza, you really should. There are booths, there's great food, all kinds of awesome food trucks that are there. There's live music. We will have 2 booths for Lifeway Church and multiple movie characters making an appearance at those booths. I can't tell you too much, because I'm sworn to secrecy. But I will say this, that if you like Toy Story, if your kids are into the whole Pikachu thing, whether the movies or the books or the cartoons or whatever, and other, let's say, Avenger-type characters, if you're into the movies, the Avenger movies, and some of the latest ones even, you will love our booth because there will be characters and superheroes and famous critters from all of those making an appearance at the booth at the Newington Extravaganza. And what hours, you may ask, and where? Well, the Newington Extravaganza takes place third Saturday of every July, and it takes place from 10 a.m. till about 3 p.m. So you are welcome to come by, say hello, say hi to some of the characters who are there working the booth, both human and otherwise, whether superheroes or not. And we would love to see you. Looks like we're back live again, so those of you joining us live, we apologize for the confusion, having some severe technical difficulties today. Let's see if the phone's back. Nope, phone's not back, but everything else is, so go figure. But anyway, so we will post the video of this and the recorded version podcast of this later so you can catch up on anything you missed. So please come down to the Extravaganza, have a blast, hang out, get some food, enjoy it, and we hope you will do so. Good morning, Jerry. Good morning, Susie. Susie says bike night was great last night, but we need more people. So having several bike nights on Friday nights at Lifeway Church, 2172 Berlin Turnpike in Newington. And I would welcome you to come. There's food, music, some great bikes to look at, some great bikers to talk to, and you don't have to be a biker to come. You can be just a dude or dudette and show up and enjoy yourself and just hang out. So hopefully you'll take advantage of that. We'll try to announce those here on Pondering as well. Susie, do you know the date of the next one? Because I don't recall, but if you do, we can post that. But again, you can participate in this program by calling 860-500-7163. Mornings when it actually works, which today is not one of those, unfortunately. I don't know why. No, now it's completely dead. Wow. That's bizarre. Never had problems with the phone, but today we do. You can email ponderingradio@gmail.com. You can post in our live stream here. You can send a carrier pigeon. There's all kinds of ways to take part. So we hope that you will, and then you'll tell your friends, neighbors, and complete strangers about it so they can join in too. As I mentioned a little bit ago, we are exploring at maybe going back on live radio. We'll keep you posted on that. If so, when and where and how that might work. My former co-host, by the way, Gary Byron, some of you know this, have heard this. Gary is now working at WDRC, both in the marketing department, but he's also hosting or co-hosting the morning show, I think, with Brad Davis. So you might want to check him out. Gary's awesome, does a really super job. So yeah, test that. And again, if we lose connection here again today, don't panic, because like I said, we will repost. So Tom Hansen should be joining us probably in about 5 minutes. We'll do a little news update, other events and stuff. I'm trying to think what else is coming down the pike that I forgot to tell you about. I'm sure there are other things. Let me just put a plug in for Lifeway Church. Lifeway Church is a sponsor of the show, and we are sponsoring some of the things we've talked about here. Things like the extravaganza, things like the bike nights we've been talking about, etc. Lifeway has 2 services every Sunday, 9:30 and 11:15 a.m., 2172 Berlin Turnpike in Newington. You can find out about all of our life group ministries, our children's ministry, our teen ministry, about some of the outreach programs, some of the new stuff that we have coming in the weeks and months ahead. I'm doing some leadership training today there at Lifeway this morning, actually right after this program, which is exciting. And we're starting a pastoral care ministry this Sunday. We'll be announcing that. You can find out about a lot of the stuff we're up to by going to lifewaych.com. lifewaych.com, or calling the church at 860-436-9216. Yep, still having connection issues. Not sure why. Let's see if the phone is working. Nope, the phone is dead too. Not sure why. Lots of fun today. But anyway, we'll keep going and keep on trucking. So let me talk a little bit about some of the leadership stuff I'm going to be doing later. We'll cover that today, and if Tom gets to join us, if the phone starts working, then we'll plug Tom into the conversation and jump to the news a little bit. I'll talk about some of the news developments as well as we go. So today I will be doing some leadership training, and what we're going to be doing is going through 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1, talking about the roles of deacon and elder in the church. We'll be talking about some of the modern implementation of that in the modern church, and how those may differ, how some of the implementations differ from what we read in those passages. And then we'll be looking at, just some general leadership principles from my book, The Crucified Church. And if you've never read the book or don't know anything about it, I would invite you to do that. Hope it will be helpful. I tried to write it in a way that was both instructive but also narrative, because I tell the story of a couple of churches I pastored and some of the structural and leadership challenges there. So it reads a little bit like, a novel in that sense. But it doesn't, it's not a novel. I don't want to mischaracterize. It does instruct about structure and organization and different offices and gifts and some of the problems that churches and pastors encounter, but I do it with the storyline and many examples of stories of things that happened in churches that I've pastored. So I hope that makes it more interesting. At least that's the goal. And you can find that on Amazon.com. You can also go to my website, which I don't promote a lot, but I should probably, RissingerResourceGroup.com, or RissingerRG for short.com. Both of those work. Rissinger, Rissinger. Sometimes people misspell my name and can't find it. Rissinger, RG.com, or RissingerResourceGroup.com. And you'll see there a resource tab. As you click on that, you can find all the books I've written and some of the workshops we do and other things. And the book, The Crucified Church, is certainly there and available for you. But just quickly, what I'll be talking about with some of our team members later is this idea that we have in the modern church complicated things dramatically. Now, I'm not saying that we have to get rid of every change or distinction, or that we can rewind the clock to the first century. nor that we necessarily should, because I think many times people try to do that, and it doesn't work either. Because we have to admit and acknowledge the reality that things have changed and shifted. Otherwise, we're completely out of touch, and we may not be effective in ministry. But I do think it's good to note the complexities we've created over the centuries and compare them to the original and say, okay, what are the timeless principles that we should be applying and that might guide our structural decisions now. So the simple way to put this, without getting into the details, is that in the first century church, there were two ordained offices, elder and deacon. That's it. Now, some would argue, well, no, what about apostles? You had the apostles and they were ordained. Well, yeah, but did the apostles think of themselves from a legal or ordination perspective? By ordination, I mean someone that's set apart, laying on of hands, an official designation. Did they think of themselves as apostles legally, administratively, or from an ordained perspective primarily, or do they think of themselves as elders? And the answer is elders, and I can prove that by telling you to go to First Peter, could be Second Peter, the first verse, and say, hey, what did Peter say about himself? Peter said about himself that he was an elder. He says, to you elders I appeal as a fellow elder, ... So he obviously saw himself, first and foremost, as an elder, not necessarily as an apostle, although he did see himself as an apostle. So what's the difference? Well, in Ephesians, Paul talks about 5 ministry gifts. We call them the fivefold ministries. He talks about apostle, evangelist, pastor, teacher, and prophet. Not necessarily in that order. Those are roles. They're based on giftedness. But I would just make a distinction between that and ordination. In Acts 6, for example, we see the ordination of the first deacons. There's laying on of hands. There's an official nominating process, I guess you could say, from the congregation. Then the apostles lay hands on them, and they say, okay, these are our deacons. Those deacons were serving in a role, but not necessarily limited role, because their gifts were still operating. So, for example, Philip and Stephen were acting as evangelists. In fact, I think Luke even refers to Philip as an evangelist. However, the only ordination we see for Philip, at least the only one that's recorded, is that he is he's a deacon. So he's a deacon by ordination, but he's an evangelist by gifting. And so that's the difference between a role, let's say, an ordination. Well, very simple. Deacon or elder, and the only difference really between deacons and elders were teachers. They were apt to teach, Paul says. They had the ability to teach. But in terms of roles and function, based on giftedness, a deacon could serve as an evangelist, an elder could be an apostle or a pastor, etc. That's why Peter sees himself by ordination as another elder, just like in any other city. To you elders, I appeal as a fellow elder, he says. And that was pretty much the structure. So you had deacon, elder at the top, and then you had below that people functioning with different gifts and roles as they were called and able to do so. Today, we have mass confusion. Some denominations ordain all 5 of the ministry gifts. So you could have ordained prophets, ordained evangelists, ordained teachers, ordained pastors, ordained apostles, all the above, and more. So, the Catholic Church has bishops. They also have archbishops and cardinals. They have pope. They have all these other roles. You have Eucharistic ministers. In the evangelical world, we don't ordain anybody, really, in most churches, except pastors, senior pastors. We don't even designate elders, and if we do have elders, they're typically people that aren't ordained. They're just good businessmen, so we put them on the board. Some churches, there are no elders, but they have deacons, and the deacons rule the church, and even the pastor reports to them. The pastor may be an elder in terms of qualification and training, but he's reporting to the deacons, and they can fire him. They don't like him or they don't like his teaching. So we've really confused things. And then we have licensure, certification, and ordination as separate things in different denominations, where you could be licensed as a minister or pastor, let's say, but not ordained. So you can serve in that local church, but if you move, you can't serve in that role anymore. It's just a mess. And so what I'm going to be doing with our trainees is take a look at 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1, try to pull out the timeless principles and say, okay, how can we be in sync with the Scripture despite the confusion of all the roles and titles and certifications and ordinations and everything else we have in the modern church, live within that so that we can still operate between churches and across denominational lines and whatnot, but not contradict what the Scripture teaches there. And we're going to be looking at that in some detail, which is going to be fun. Should be, might be challenging, but it'll be fun. So, so that's the plan later today. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the world today in terms of news. We're going to have to do it without Tom because our phones are down and still having technical issues. Apparently, this is an issue with our carrier, Cox Communications. I just saw a note blip across the screen saying that Cox is down, and that's the problem. Till 2 a.m., 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. Well, my wife tells me till 12 a.m. That's crazy. Can you also unplug and replug in the phone just to see if it'll reboot? 'Cause I don't think the phone is Cox. It's in my office. No, I don't think it is. I don't know, try it. I might be wrong. I thought it was. Oh no, you're right. It is Cox. Everything's down. All right, so. Yeah, I don't. It isn't Verizon. All right, never mind. That explains it. So everything Cox Communications has, phone, internet, everything is down. I'm assuming that means TV too, or wow. So that's a challenge. But anyway, we'll keep going and we'll record this and post it later when we're able to. In terms of the news, some of the things that we're watching and that have been kind of amazing to see unfold really center around the presidential race and the issues being brought up in the presidential race. I'm amazed at the discrepancies and the dichotomy. I don't know if we can say it. I don't know how else to say it. Within the Democratic Party and the differences between, let's say, President Trump, not even the Republican Party so much, because I think the Republican Party is really Republicrat. They're trying to be, or pretend, many of them, in the sort of standard deep state, ensconced, entrenched political world of Washington. Many of them are trying to be Democrats with a different name. But when you look at the president, and then you compare him to everybody else running for president on the Democratic side, it illustrates, and this is not meant to be mean or pick on anybody, it just illustrates the deep, deep, deep divide in our country between different philosophies and values. And the more these people talk, and the more they are covered by the media, who is very much in sync with the progressive, ultra-liberal side of things, the more clear this distinction and divide becomes. And I think, as a Christian, my concern is to pray for peace, because if this divide continues and is extended much wider, there could be civil war. And I know that sounds alarmist, and I don't mean it to. I'm just trying to be honest. These divergent philosophies, and it's not just a matter of potato kind of stuff, stuff that's inconsequential but distinct. No. These are major divides, and they're becoming broader and broader by the minute. There's less room to stand in the middle. People try to straddle the fence and draw both sides together, and this is, the moderate perspective or position. the wider the divide, the deeper the trench, the harder it is to pull them together. And I worry about that a bit because of what it might mean to our country and what it might mean to even us as individuals. And also, as a Christian, I look at it and I look at history and I think if the socialist, liberal, progressive side of things gets their way, ultimately the church will have to go underground because Christianity does not operate in a progressive, liberal, socialist environment. There's typically persecution, there's typically censorship, and censure. It just doesn't coexist. It's not possible. And it's not because the Christians are pig-headed, stubborn, redneck, Bible-thumping, gun-toting, evil people, the way they're portrayed. It's because philosophically Christians cannot tolerate, put up with, ignore, or go along with these extreme progressive liberal values. Some Christians try, and I, in one sense, in a weird way, even though I'm not one of those people, I do, in a sense, applaud their hearts to try to maintain unity. The Bible does speak to that, to fight for unity, to work hard to maintain unity within the church, for example. But you can't, as Paul says, what fellowship does light have with darkness? What fellowship does faith have with the enemy, Belial or Baal? We can't have. There is none. We can't. That's why we're not unequally yoked together in marriage, for example. If we're single, we're supposed to marry someone who's a believer. Why? Because there's no equal yoking between these philosophies. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the issues that are deepening the trench, broadening the division in our country, such that we as Christians are praying, but also standing firm and knowing where we stand and why, biblically and spiritually, in the face of this ever-broadening division. All right, so, and I think the best way to do that, and we've done bits and pieces of this before in the program, but the best way to do it is kind of outline the primary platform of sort of the liberal progressives in the Democratic Party, and they are front and center and on the news almost every day. So these aren't hard to find. One of the first things we can discuss as Christians, and we have on this program, and I won't belabor the point for that reason, but it's the issue of abortion. Freedom of choice, as it's called, which is really a misnomer because the baby doesn't get a choice. The baby's a human being with basic rights guaranteed in our Constitution and our bylaws and the preamble and the Bill of Rights, I should say, not bylaws. But we don't treat the baby that way, although sometimes we do. So if someone assaults a pregnant woman and she is injured and the baby dies, that person can be tried for murder or manslaughter. In most of our 50 states, that's still true, still a law. So how it is that we see that baby as a human being that's been murdered, thus the perpetrator can be tried as a murderer, we see it that way on one hand, but at the same time we'll argue that it's not a human life until it's born and breathing on its own, and even that now is being called in question in many states, as we've, again, talked about in the program. How we can do that at the same time and think that we are morally, rationally, and legally consistent is just insane. It's crazy. And it illustrates the enemy's hand. The Bible talks about Satan, as the God of this world, the author of confusion, the dragon that deceives the whole world in Revelation 12, I should say. And he's doing a great job because people think it is logically, forget about religion, faith, morals, just put logic on the table. People think it's logically consistent to suggest that we try someone for murder who attacks a woman who's pregnant and kills her baby, and at the same time to suggest that that baby's not a human life, therefore if the mother chooses to end it, even after birth now in some states, New York, Virginia, it was proposed, where if the baby's born alive, after a botched abortion or whatever, and the mother decides that she doesn't want it, they can give the baby an injection or whatever and kill it, and that's okay. Well, wait a minute. If it's a human life, such that taking it as an act of murder on the one hand, then it's a human life such that taking it should be an act of murder on the other hand, whether it's his mother or not. And the question I've had in this, logically, emotionally, legally, is, okay, if we're going to allow the mother to snuff out the baby's life at any point in the pregnancy, and even immediately after the pregnancy, with the help of her doctor, then when does that end, that right? Can mom take its life up to 5 minutes after birth? Okay, and if that's okay, then what about 10 minutes after birth? What if she's so weak from the labor process that she passes out for an hour and comes to and says, no, I don't want that child? Can they still take his life? How about a day? How about 2 days? How about a week? How about a month? How about at age 2 when they're standing in the supermarket and the child's pitching a fit because he wants a candy bar and mommy doesn't want to give it to him? Can she take his life then? And say, well, it's a choice, And the argument is made that this is all a woman's right to choose what happens with her own body. So maybe it's while the child's nursing, because he's still dependent on the mother's body for milk. Okay, but what about a bottle-fed child? If she's, using formula, is she no longer allowed to take his life? But if she's still nursing up to age 2 or whatever, then she could take his. I mean, you see how ridiculous this is. Putting aside morality, if you want to talk biblical morals and values, Jesus affirms the Old Testament teaching, as do the apostles, that while we're in the womb, God knew us. He knows us. He calls us by name. He has plans for us. He loves us. So he acknowledges our human existence and distinctives prior to birth. And that should settle it right there for us as Christians. So the primary platform, the holy grail, in essence the ordinance of abortion, which has become sort of a battle cry for the Democratic Party, the progressive liberal side of things, should immediately deter Christians. We should turn from that and run and say, no way. Can't vote for those people, can't be part of that. That is a lead position, a litmus test that they use to determine their own candidates and who they're going to support. And again, I would challenge anybody who doubts that to find me a case where someone could even be considered as a presidential candidate or vice presidential candidate within the Democratic Party while being pro-life, while saying, no, we totally reject a woman's right to commit murder and kill her child at any point after conception. Do you think that person would stand a chance to even be in the primaries for the Democratic Party? And you know the answer. The answer is no, absolutely not. So that's one issue that's, again, widening the gap in our country between two sides. One, a more moral, more Christian-based, not exclusively Christian, but nonetheless, primarily, and one that is absolutely not. Another position is economic, is socialism. The promotion of socialism as a superior economic policy and approach and philosophy for the government, for the country. The liberal progressives are all about socialism, which is, by the way, someone called it the PR front for communism, which it is, historically, always so. And communism and atheism are arm in arm. So just that alone, without even getting into the numbers and the practical realities and the economic and biblical, unwise position and results of socialism, just the fact that socialism is the front for communism, which is always atheistic and anti-Christian, that should be enough for Christians to run the other way. But many are not. Some would even argue, well, no, the early church was socialist. And, look at Acts. Not true. Not true. Not true. You can't be a socialist and believe what Paul wrote to the churches when he said that he that will not work, neither shall he eat. That is contrary to much of the socialist philosophies, where even Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez has said that if you choose, you don't want to work, you'd rather paint or whatever, you don't have to, but you'll still have a guaranteed wage. Well, that is directly in contradiction to the Scripture. So, as a Christian, I can't support that. I can't even get close to it. And when I look at the fruits of socialism around the world, in places like Venezuela, I say, no way, no thank you. And people say, well, what about Europe? What about Canada? Well, having been in Canada and having family in Canada and spent a lot of time over the years in Canada, I can tell you two things. One, Canada is not fully socialist. Canada leans that way and has implemented socialism in certain segments of their economy. But Canada is not socialist country. And it would take too long to unpack that, but I think if you study it carefully, you'll see that's true. There's still democracy in Canada. There's still voting. There's still some personal responsibility in Canada. However, where they have implemented socialist policies, such as in healthcare or other parts of their economy, they have suffered for it. By that I mean they've suffered financially, where people pay close to 60 cents on the dollar in taxes when you add up everything, provincial tax, federal tax, fees, licenses, gasoline taxes. I mean, folks, Canada is self-sufficient in oil, and yet they're paying well over $5, sometimes closer to $6 a gallon for gas. Most of that is tax. So there ain't no free lunch, baby. They're hurt financially by these national socialist policies. In addition to that, please note that the extreme socialist wing of the Canadian government, now headed by their Prime Minister Trudeau, is anti-Christian. Trudeau has said that Christians and Christianity is the most dangerous philosophy, and they are the most dangerous group of people in the country, and that they need to be watched carefully, etc. Now, that is a precursor, folks, for persecution. If he had more power, if there was not a democratic check against his leadership, we know where Christians would be. We see it in other parts of the world and throughout history. And when we talk about Europe, I mean, the fall of the euro, Brexit, the immigration policies that have led to a dramatic increase in Islam and violence and even terrorist acts, the financial devastation and bankruptcy of places like Belgium, countries like Belgium, indicate and show clearly that socialism is not the answer. But that's a big part of the platform here, and it's a major portion of the divide between the two sides here in the United States. Another platform issue that's come out and has been covered a lot in the news is immigration. And they had appeals yesterday, as I record this, for people to become soft-hearted and supportive. Andrea Ocasio-Cortez was on video and on in the testimony before Congress and on all over the networks, crying about the children sleeping on the concrete floor, the people eating unhealthy food, people drinking out of the toilets, and that this is in the United States where the American flag is displayed, and she's crying. Of course, she's never really been too keen on the American flag, but apparently now she is. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm not falling for it. Let me explain why. A week before, or 2 weeks before this trip where she saw these poor children and came back crying to Congress, she voted against an aid package that would have provided, among other things, beds from a company, I forget where they're located, I think in Iowa, for all the families that are in the detention centers on the border with Mexico. And she voted against that because she wanted to guarantee that the president couldn't use any of it to enforce immigration law, help pay for more ICE officials, immigration control people, or build a wall or anything like that. Now, the package was not designated for that purpose, but she and others wanted to make sure he couldn't get his hands on it for any of those things, because they want open borders. They want people to be able to flow in, uncontrolled, unchecked. That is the position that party has taken in general. And so because it might have slowed the immigration or flow of people across the border, she didn't want anything to do with it. So she voted no, so the aid wasn't approved, so no money was spent, so no beds were sent. And then she goes down and sees the children on the floor, and she cries and weeps about the poor children on the floor. because I think there's an agenda there, again, to open the borders to anyone just to flow across. Now, why would we as Christians oppose that? Well, two things in my mind. One, we have a biblical responsibility to care for the innocent. You say, yes, the innocent children trying to cross the border with their families, they're being separated from their parents. And, well, time out. We start with our own children, our own families. We need to make sure that who we're letting in is not a danger to them. Sex traffickers, terrorists, MS-13 gang members, all the above have crossed by the hundreds, and there have been multiple crimes all across the nation committed by these illegal immigrants. And so we need to be more careful about who we let in and when we let them in. There have been people trying to cross the border claiming children as their own when they were actually coyotes, or people caught up in child pornography and child sexual trafficking and slavery. And we've caught them by detaining them and doing some checking and homework before we let them in. So we need to be covering our border, blocking people from just wandering across in any way they want, and then vetting who comes in to avoid that and to keep our own citizens, including our own innocent children, safe. Secondly, that also allows us to capture some of these clowns and remove the children from them so they don't put them out as sex objects for perverts around the nation. And those children need to be put into child protective custody. Thirdly, we should oppose open immigration, open borders, because the goal of our country and of Christians in general is not to bring people out of their own country and displace everyone and have everyone in the world live in the 50 contiguous or 48 contiguous states and the 2 other states, Hawaii and Alaska. That's not our goal. The goal is not for us to bring everybody here and overpopulate and undernourish everyone in our country because we brought the whole world here and created a massive, a whole series of cities like San Francisco where people are defecating in the street and the ground and sleeping and urinating in public, and it's just a nightmare. Same in LA now. That is not our goal. Our goal is to help people, yes, and as Christians we should be generous, yes. But we help them where they are. We teach them how to fish. We don't just hand them a fish. We show them principles like what we do at the Sons of Thunder farm in Zambia in Africa, where they can grow crops in their environment, in their own place, and establish a life for themselves in the country of their origin with people who speak their language, and they don't have to come across the seas and risk their lives in a boat and then, live in a detention center and hope to escape or run across the border, being in danger of their own lives because of natural, the heat and the desert and the lack of food and animals and whatever else could cause their demise. They don't have to do that. We can help them where they are, and they can have a nice life. And quite frankly, many of the people I've worked with in Zambia would not want to be here. They would not be happy here. They love their home, they love their family, they love their country, and now they're living in a place where they can eat and have food and have business and develop themselves and get educated, and they don't need to come to the United States of America. That, my friends, should be our ultimate perspective and goal, helping other countries have the freedom and prosperity and blessing that we've had through intervention, not just opening the borders and saying, okay, better rush in and let's have our country start to look like yours. Or we can make the United States of America a massive Venezuelan experiment where everybody's starving and everybody's walking through human feces in the street. And yeah, that's great. Let's do that. No, that is not the biblical Christian response. So those are 3 of the issues, right? Abortion, the whole issue of socialism as a policy, immigration. These are the topics that are being debated in the presidential primaries. These are the topics that will be debated and discussed in the election once the Democratic nominee is named to run against the president. And we as Christians, we don't have to be a Republican, I'm not, but we better stand on conservative biblical truths on these issues and others like it, so that at the end of the day, we can argue and defend and explain those things from a Christian perspective, and know where we stand and our children stand such that we don't get caught up in stuff that could be destructive and ultimately anti-Christian. One of the ironies, too, I'll mention this quickly because I'm almost out of time, is you'll hear many of these liberal progressives talk about and support Islam. We have Congresswoman Omar, who is a Muslim and is very pro-Islam and anti-Jewish, Christian, anti-Israel. She hates our country, even though she's a Somali refugee who would probably be dead if she hadn't been able to come here years ago as a child, ironically. But these people will push for Islamic values and Muslim, not just equality, but almost promotion. And yet, many of the women that are backing this in Congress, and many of the men too, fail to recognize that under Sharia law, they'd be put to death. You know, some of the Democratic candidates, for example, one in particular, Congressman Buttigieg, he's an open homosexual. If Sharia law were enforced and we were under Muslim rule, he'd be put to death. And yet they promote, if they promote any religion, it's Islam. And some of the members of Congress who are on this progressive front and leading the charge, one of them in particular and a couple others in the background, are Muslims. And if they get their way, the rest of the party that's promoting them would probably be in jail or dead. And so, again, as Christians, we cannot back that. We can't stand with that. The worship of Allah, who is a pagan god and idol. And we can't stand for faith that would destroy Christianity were it given the opportunity. So those are some things to be aware of, to be watchful and prayerful about as this election season heats up and as we see the divide increase. Our prayer should be peace, for peace in the country, and our prayer should be for God's people not to be deceived, but to stand on the truth. Our prayer should be to speak the truth in love, which means we're not combative, insulting, mean, but we're also not foolish, and we don't compromise where we should not compromise. So I hope that's helpful. Hey, thanks for joining us. Again, we welcome your input, comments, 860-500-7163, or via the internet, email ponderingradio@gmail.com, or right here on the Pondering Radio page of Facebook. We'll be back next Saturday at 8 a.m. Until then, stay in the Word, keep praying, keep pondering. Bye for now. God bless you.